Have you ever had a weird experience at Buc-ee's? Now, there was this man named Alex. Alex said one summer he got a job at Buc-ee's and he worked there for about 6 months until one night he had a very creepy experience. So he said he went in for his normal night shift and he could tell when he got there it was going to be a pretty slow night. So after about 15, 20 minutes after the start of his shift, he found himself behind the counter checking in inventory. So that's when he noticed this guy walk in. He had this button up shirt with this big beaded necklace, these blue jeans, and this long black hair. And he said something about this guy seemed off, and he got the feeling like he might try and do something. So he kept a close eye on him. He said this guy just walked over into the corner of the store, and he turned and he started to stare at Alex. And Alex, after 5 minutes, he looks over, he sees this guy still staring at him. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So for 20 minutes, this guy just sat there staring at him. And then he turned and just walked out of the store. A little bit later after this, he goes and he takes his break. And he said he got a phone call from his friend that he hadn't heard from in years. He said this friend was Native American. He was very spiritual. And so he picks up the phone call. And his friend's like, hey, Alex, this is going to sound really weird, but I had sort of this premonition, this vision. And I feel like I'm supposed to tell you, run away. Just remember that, run away. And Alex is like, okay, I have to get back to work. So he hangs up and he goes back to work. After a couple hours, he finds himself by the front window sweeping. And this big storm had came on. And as he's looking out the window, he sees a flash of lightning. And as it illuminates the parking lot, he sees this wolf, dog-like animal, running right in front of the store. It looked like it had mange. It had this thick brown fur, and it looked in pretty bad shape. He said the lightning flashed again, and he looked back out there, and it was gone. So his boss comes up to him and says, hey, I need you to go and take out all the garbage. So he takes all the bags of garbage and he throws it in this container, and he starts going out of the store. As he gets to the side of the store, he begins to hear shuffling sounds. And so he grabs his flashlight, and as he turns around to the back side of the store, right there's the dumpster, he sees something digging out of the garbage. And as he gets a closer look and he shines a light on this thing, said it was a man with no shirt, no pants, but his face looked like a dog. And he said that's when this thing turned and it said, Alex, Alex. And instantly his jaw dropped. He turned and he remembered what his friend had told him, and he just ran away. And he ran all the way to his car, jumped in, and he left, and he quit that night. He said a couple days later, he heard in the news that someone at that Buc-ee's disappeared. And he always felt like his friend was giving him a warning because that could have been him. One of the things I often tell people is do not play with a Ouija board, because Ouija boards are essentially a doorway. And when you open that door, anything can come through. It's almost like setting up this beacon up in the air, and you are inviting everything to come into your life. Now, I heard this story. There was this young boy named Colton. And Colton and his buddies decided they were going to play with a Ouija board one night. And, they had fun. They didn't know how this pendulum was moving by itself. And, it kind of thrilled them and everything. But they didn't think anything of it. So Colton, he takes the Ouija board and he puts it in his closet. Later that night, when he's sleeping, he starts hearing like a banging sound in his closet. And all of a sudden, when he jumps up out of bed, he looks over at his closet and the door slowly opens. And he gets up and looks in the closet. There's no one in there. So he's like, that's kind of weird, but he kind of shakes it off, right? The next night, when he's in his bedroom once again, right? He's laying down in his bed. He can't sleep. All of a sudden, he hears this banging sound again coming from the closet. And the closet door opens by itself. The next morning, when he wakes up, he finds the Ouija board is sitting on his bed. So he thinks, you know what? I am done with this Ouija board. I shouldn't have messed with it. I'm done with this. So he takes it out back and he starts a fire. And he starts trying to burn this Ouija board. As he's burning this thing and it's on fire, he hears just disembodied voices. He hears screams. And he thinks, okay, this thing is just ashes now. Everything's fine. Well, it was for a couple weeks, nothing happened. Until one night, he wakes up And he said he just felt like the air was like very thick. And he had his bedroom door open at the time. Well, all of a sudden, his bedroom door slammed shut, and his bed just starts shaking violently. And he said, it felt like there was an earthquake. He jumps out of bed, and stuff on his shelf just starts flying at him across the room. And so he, is running to the door, trying to get the door open, but something like is holding it shut. He starts screaming, for his parents. And when his parents come, the door unlocks. He opens the door, and he tells his parents, what had happened. They don't believe him. So he said, things just kept getting significantly worse. And every night he was just like tormented by something. And he said, about 6-7 months into this happening, right, this thing tormenting him, he goes over to his grandma's house one day. And when he walks into his grandma's house and stuff, he starts talking to her, and he looks over on a shelf. She has a Ouija board on the shelf. And he's like, wait a second, that is the Ouija board that I burned in the fire, the box and everything. And he goes, Grandma, where did you get that? Do you know what that is? And she goes, oh no, honey, someone left a board game on my front door. And so I brought it in, but I couldn't figure out how to play it. And he said, give me that. And he grabbed it, and he takes off running with it, right? So he takes it out into the woods. He buries this thing. And he thinks, okay, maybe this is the end of it. And once again, same thing. Every night, just stuff is happening. Stuff's flying across the room. His bed is shaking, he starts waking up with scratches all over his body. He starts smelling a very foul sulfur smell in his room. And so he goes to a person who is a paranormal investigator and says, what do I do? Like, I ever since I've messed with this Ouija board, something has been following me and like attached to me. And this paranormal investigator said, well, basically, you need to go take this Ouija board and, say that I renounce you. I do not accept you into my life. Like, I am not inviting you. You need to leave. So he goes back out into the woods where he had buried this Ouija board, except it's dug up and it's not there anymore. And so he said, after that, like, it sort of, everything stopped for a little while. It came back, but it was very sporadic. But he said still to this day, like, stuff happens to him from messing with the Ouija board. The Tall Hat Man is this entity that people often say that they see at night in the room, and they say he often resembles Abraham Lincoln. And I have heard hundreds of reports and cases of people seeing this person that they describe looking like Abraham Lincoln with a large top hat. Now, my uncle, when he was a young boy, he said he was in his room one night, and he said he woke up to like a breeze blowing in to his room, which he thought was weird because he always like kept his window closed. When he looks over at his window, he said like the curtains were kind of blowing. He looked back the other way, and then when he looked back at the window again, he said there was a tall man standing next to the window. And he said he looked just like Abraham Lincoln, except this man was actually standing through his desk. And he said this man just stared at him, and he got this big grin on his face. My uncle was like so terrified, he threw the covers over his head, and then he woke up the next day, he was gone. And still to this day, he does not know who that was that he saw. This next story comes out of Virginia. There was this woman. She said that she had went to her grandmother's house when she was younger to stay for a couple weeks. And she said when she would go to her grandma's, she didn't have an extra bedroom, so she would have to sleep out on the couch. So that night, she said, she got ready to go to bed. And like, she, went and laid down on the couch. And she said all of a sudden she was awoken to the sound of her grandma talking in her sleep from her bedroom. And she said she goes to her bedroom and she hears her grandma saying, he's coming, he's coming. No, 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 he's coming. And she is like, Grandma, you okay? Grandma, you okay? Her grandma, was just sleeping. So she's like, she must be having a bad dream or whatever. She goes back to her couch, she lays down, and she said, she finally fell asleep. Well, she has this dream. And she says in this dream, she is outside of the house, which happens to be near the woods. And she starts walking through the woods. And she says as she's walking through the woods, she keeps hearing someone chanting, he's coming, he's coming. And she said it just kept getting louder and louder. And she said all of a sudden she found herself back at her grandma's house. She goes up to the back door, and she said she walked inside to the living room. And she said she could see a man standing next to her on the couch, dressed like Abraham Lincoln, with this big, tall top hat. And she said he was just staring at her. She woke up immediately after this, and she said she looked around the room. She didn't see anything. She said the next day, in the morning, her grandma tells her, I had the craziest dream. And she said, well, what's that, Grandma? She said, I dreamt that some man was staring at you on the couch in this tall black hat.